What's up, everybody? What's up? Welcome back to another Legal Hands to the Face podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bill Colarulo. What an exciting time it is to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan. We have made it through the offseason. The rookies have reported as of Monday, July 24th. The rookies are at training camp. On July 26th, the veterans will report. What seemed like such a long road since Super Bowl 57 is finally over. The season, the 2023 season is here. And guys, we have some huge announcements to make. If you're not already following us on social media, head on over to all your favorite social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Threads. We are there. And the big announcement, we have signed a deal with the Jacob Sports Network and are going to be hosting a live show on YouTube every Monday night during the regular season. Obviously, if the game's on Monday or Thursday, we're going to change that, but it will be on the day following the Philadelphia Eagles game, a live show broadcast on the Jacob Sports Network. I am fired up. We have gotten there. We started this a little bit before the Super Bowl. We've been posting every single day. The support from all of you has been amazing, and we hope it continues as we take this show to the Jacob Sports Network. We also got some big announcements that I can't release yet. I'm still in talks with Jacob Sports about doing some other things. We will announce that soon. But guys, get on over all your favorite platforms. Follow Legal Hands to the Face. Go to YouTube. Follow not only Legal Hands, but follow Jacob Sports. You can subscribe. They have a lot of great shows in addition to Legal Hands to the Face. There's a lot of good shows over there, and it's going to be some awesome things. Like I said, I have some other announcements I can't release yet, but it's going to be huge, and I am so excited for the 2023 season that is finally here. What I want to talk about today are my 7 biggest storylines going into training camp. And there's a lot of them. I mean, there are a lot of question marks. As much as I'm excited about this team, and I think that they can repeat, we know that Super Bowl hangover is real. There's been 2 teams since the 90s that have lost the Super Bowl that have gotten back, the Buffalo Bills, the New England Patriots. It is not easy, but I have been saying over and over again that if there is any team that can do it, it's this Philadelphia Eagles team. The leadership on this team with the veterans, Jason Kelce, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson, and Jalen Hurts. There's enough leadership on this squad that they can overcome that Super Bowl hangover, but it will not be easy. But what are the top 7 storylines as we head into training camp? Number 1, and I think this is going to be the most important thing, is health. The Philadelphia Eagles have to stay healthy. We already saw today reports come out of Detroit that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the former safety for the Eagles, went down with a non-contact knee injury. We don't know the severity of it yet as I'm recording this podcast, but things like that can really derail a season. The Buffalo Bills, such high hopes for Nyheim Hines this year, the running back that they made a trade for last season. He has a non-contact knee injury, not even during training camp, probably training on his own. Looks like he's out for the year. So the Philadelphia Eagles have to stay healthy. I looked at the Football Outsiders adjusted games lost. They do a nice job of looking at the stats of games lost by starters and important pieces. And you look at the Philadelphia Eagles last year. We know all 22 starters were in the Super Bowl. But if you look at the games lost last year, they were the top 3 in the NFL with only 42.4 games lost. Not a surprise they make it to the Super Bowl, and right behind them as the 4th best, the Kansas City Chiefs with only 48.1 games lost. And then you go to the flip side of that, and you look at the 2 worst teams in the NFL, the Denver Broncos with 148.6 games lost due to injury. The Los Angeles Rams, 146.6 games lost. So they had over 100 more games lost to injury than the Philadelphia Eagles had. Not surprising, Eagles go to the Super Bowl. The Rams and the Broncos don't even make the playoffs. So what I love about Nick Sirianni, there was a lot of mixed reviews when he first came in as coach about the way he ran training camp and practices. He doesn't have that old school mentality where you beat people into the ground. I mean, I remember when I was playing even high school and college football, we had 3 practices a day during training camp. Those days are over. You look at the Eagles, their practices are very efficient. They work hard, but they're not going to be out there for an extended period of time. There's no need to take that much stress on the body, especially as these guys start to get older. Health is the priority for this football team. And I think Nick Sirianni and his training staff, they did a really good job last year. And even in 2021, they had the 12th least amount of games lost to injury. So in the 2 years that Nick Sirianni has been the head coach, that has been a theme, staying healthy, keeping his players on the field. You've heard the old cliche, the best ability is availability. And that's why the Eagles have to make sure their players stay healthy. But let's look at some other intriguing storylines going into the 2023 training camp. The offense didn't lose a lot of players. Obviously, they lost Miles Sanders, but they also lost right guard Isaac Seumola, who signed with the Chicago Bears. So now they have to replace him at right guard. There's a lot of question marks there. Who is the starter going to be? And there's basically three options that I see here. Number one, and probably the most likely, by the way, he didn't sign with the Chicago Bears. I said Isaac Seumola signed with the Bears. He signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm thinking about TJ Edwards, a linebacker, who we will talk about shortly. But Isaac Seumola goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But there's three options that I think can fill that position. The first and most likely who I think is going to fill that right guard position is Cam Jurgens. But the other options are rookie Tyler Steen. And don't forget about Jack Driscoll, who's still on this roster. You know, I had Barrett Brooks on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I really respect his opinion when it comes to offensive linemen. He said, without a doubt, he sees Cam Jurgens winning that right guard spot. But if you listen to guys like Ray Dittinger or Brian Baldinger, their concern with Cam Jurgens is his size. He's listed at 6'3", 300 pounds. He's only 23 years old. He was a second-round draft pick in 2022. He was drafted to be a center because everyone thought Jason Kelce was going to retire. Well, fortunately, Kelce comes back for another season. Can Cam Jurgens slide into that right guard position, or is he too small? That's a big question mark. We've only seen him play the center position in the NFL. In fact, last year, he only played 35 snaps, and they were all at center. We've never seen him play guard. But you look at his strengths, you look at his intangibles, you look at his athleticism. This is a guy that I think has the capability of sliding over to that right guard position, and you're putting him in between two future Hall of Famers in Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. I agree with Barrett Brooks. I think that he is going to win that right guard position, but it's going to be an interesting battle. You take a look at Jack Driscoll. He mostly played tackle last year, but he's been in the league since 2020. Eagles drafted him in the 4th round. He's a little bit bigger than Cam Jurgens. He's 6'5", 312 pounds. He's still only 26 years old. Last year, he played a decent amount. I was surprised. I had to go back and double check this, but he played over 350 snaps, most of those coming at tackle. Eagles rested their starters in that last game against the Giants a lot. You know, a lot of blowouts where they put Driscoll in and they took out Mailata or Lane Johnson. And if you remember, Lane Johnson went down with an injury late in the season, came back for the playoffs, fortunately. But Driscoll did play over 350 snaps at tackle. He's another option at guard. But I really think that Cam Jurgens' biggest competition is going to come from rookie Tyler Steen. This guy is massive. He's 6'6", 320 pounds. The Eagles took him in the 3rd round this year out of Alabama. Prior to that, he played at Vanderbilt before transferring to the Crimson Tide. He's a guy who played tackle in college, but a lot of professional scouts, a lot of the experts are saying his measurables really translate well to a guard in the NFL. But we will see. Is it going to be Jurgens or is it going to be Tyler Steen? I think it's going to require a lot for Tyler Steen to be able to beat out Cam Jurgens. I think what we saw from Jurgens in the preseason last year, I know it was at the center position, but you could see this guy is smart, he's athletic, and he is strong. I know he's small. He's on the smaller side, but I think that's something that can be recovered. It allows the Eagles to be a little bit more athletic. That's my prediction, but that's a storyline to keep your eye on. Who's getting the most reps at that right guard position to start the season? And like I said, the Eagles didn't lose a lot of players on offense. They did lose Miles Sanders and they did lose Isaac Seumola. But outside of that, they're bringing everybody back. And this is going to be an exciting, exciting offense to watch. And another storyline to watch is that wide receiver 3 position. We all know Quez Watkins was the starting wide receiver 3 last year. I thought he had a very disappointing season in 2022. I know Nick Sirianni has come out and talked about how that Quez Watkins did his job, that it doesn't really show up on the stat sheet, but you could see it on tape that he's opening things up for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I'm sure there is some truth in that. You did see Quez Watkins sometimes take some attention away from A.J. and Devontae, but when he got his opportunities, he did not take advantage of them enough. You look at Quez Watkins' stats in 2021, so going back 2 years ago, and things were promising. He's played in all 17 games. He had 43 catches, over 645 yards. And the real important thing here was he had a 15-yard per catch average. Pretty damn good. Going into 2022, yeah, you bring in A.J. Brown. He's going to lose some targets. There's no doubt about it. I'm not as concerned with the fact that his receptions dropped. He only had 33 catches last year as opposed to the 43 he had the year before. But what was more alarming is you saw his yardage drop from 647 yards all the way down to 354, and his average yards per catch went from 15 yards per catch down to 10.7. That's a problem. Quez Watkins is supposed to be a burner. He's supposed to be a guy that can take the lid off of a defense so that these safeties can't creep down and they have to respect the long ball. Well, he's only averaging 10 yards a catch last year. That's not enough. And we saw too many mistakes and too many missed opportunities. Prime examples, the Washington Commanders game, big turnover. The Dallas Cowboys game, Gardner Minshew gets credited with those interceptions, but Quez Watkins was the one who couldn't wrestle those balls away. I blame him for that. And then Super Bowl 57, it would have been a tough catch, but we will consider that a drop. You've seen the highlights. I don't want to relive it. I want to move on from Super Bowl 57. But Quez Watkins, too many missed opportunities last year. So I like what Howie Roseman and the Eagles do. They bring in a guy who's going to he's going to bring some competition to that wide receiver 3 position, and that's local boy Olamide Zaccheaus, who went to the St. Joe's Prep High School. He played 4 seasons for the Atlanta Falcons. He's entering his 5th year, and this is a kid who can play. He's a little bit small, but you look at his stats in 2021, played in all 17 games. He had 31 catches, over 400 yards with a 13.1 catch average. And then you look at him last year. He improves. He plays in all 17 games. He has 40 catches last year, over 530 yards for a 13.3 average on a bad Atlanta Falcons team. They had some spotty quarterback play with Marcus Mariota, with the rookie Desmond Ridder, and Olamide Zaccheaus. It's a tough name to say. I think everybody calls him Oz. But you look at Oz's stats, this is a guy who can play. He's going to really push Quez Watkins for playing time at that wide receiver 3 position. And there's some other guys that potentially could step in there. They have track star Devin Allen. They brought in a guy, Charleston Rambo. Interesting free agent pickup for the Eagles. He played with Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma. Charleston Rambo did transfer out, went to Miami, but when Hurts was there, he played at Oklahoma. Does he have some sort of chemistry with Jalen Hurts? We will see. But keep your eye on that wide receiver 3 position going into this training camp and throughout the preseason. Who's going to win those reps? Is it going to be Quez Watkins? Is it going to be Olamide Zaccheaus? Or is it going to be someone else? That's an important position for this team. Obviously, your wide receiver 1 is A.J. Brown. Your wide receiver 2 is Devontae Smith. You still have Dallas Goedert and a ton of weapons at running back that we'll talk about in a second. But who is going to be your wide receiver 3? I think you're going to see Olamide Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins split reps there, and Nick Sirianni will go with whoever the hot hand is each game, each week. But it's going to be a fun one to watch. Let's move over to the other side of the ball. So I said the offense didn't lose a lot of starters. They lose Miles Sanders and Isaac Seumola. Well, the same thing can't be said for the defense. If you've been following me on social media or listening to my podcast, you know one of the major concerns I have on this team is at the linebacker position. They lose both starters, TJ Edwards and Kazir White, in free agency. I was okay with them letting Kazir White walk. I thought that his play at times was good, but he was just too inconsistent. But TJ Edwards was a guy that I really liked. He led the team in tackles. He wore the green dot last year. He was the leader on that defense. He was in the top 7 tackles in the NFL. They lose them both, TJ Edwards and Kazir White. The linebacker position is one where they don't have a lot of depth. Obviously, everyone is hoping that Nakobe Dean is the stud we saw at Georgia a couple years ago, but he's only played 34 snaps in the NFL, guys. I know everyone said, oh, well, Nakobe Dean looked great when he got in. Oh, he looked so good. He's played 34 snaps, and he has 13 tackles in his NFL career. So this is a guy that they're putting a lot of hopes on. He's going to wear that green dot. He's going to be the play caller on that defense. We have to hope and pray that Nakobe Dean is the guy we saw at Georgia. If he is, that defense is going to be in great shape. Are you kidding? You put Nakobe Dean behind the defensive line that the Eagles are going to have with Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams, Nolan Smith, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, BG. I mean, the list goes on and on. This defense can be stacked if these linebackers can step up and play. But outside of Nakobe Dean, the other options there are Nicholas Morrow, a guy they brought in from the Chicago Bears, had a promising season last year with Chicago, started all 17 games, had 116 tackles. The thing I don't like is that the Chicago Bears let him walk. They let him walk, and who do they sign? TJ Edwards. That's what I said earlier. TJ Edwards signs with Chicago. So if Nicholas Morrow was so good, why did they let him walk and move on and sign TJ? And if you remember, during free agency, Chicago Bears signed TJ almost immediately in free agency. So we kind of flip-flop linebackers. I think the Chicago Bears probably got the better one in TJ Edwards. But if Nicholas Morrow can be serviceable and Nakobe Dean is a stud like the guy we saw at Georgia, then the Eagles will be just fine. But that's a big question mark. And there's another linebacker on this team that during OTAs, Dave Zingaro, Elliott Shore-Parks, if you were listening to the podcast a couple weeks ago, Johnny Marks was on talking about Christian Ellis. We've only really seen him play special teams. Great special team player. But can he step up and start taking reps as a starting linebacker on this team? We will see. But outside of Nakobe Dean, Nicholas Morrow, Christian Ellis, a lot of question marks. Davion Taylor is still on this team. Sean Bradley is still on this team. But guys that really have never been able to step up and play a lot of defensive reps. So we will see what's going to happen this year. But that is a big question mark. Another question mark on this defense, another position where the Eagles lose both starters, is the safety position. We all know Marcus Epps leaves in free agency to go to the Raiders. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson goes to the Detroit Lions. I'm wishing Chauncey Gardner well. Today, the news came out that he had a non-contact knee injury. I don't know how serious it is, but you don't wish injury on anybody. I hope that he recovers. But these are two big losses on the back end of that defense. Who is going to replace them? There's really 4 options here of guys that can step in and replace him. Obviously, number one, Reed Blankenship, the undrafted rookie from last year. He did it when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson went down with that lacerated kidney. He played 45% of the defensive snaps last year. He had 4 starts. You really saw some great instincts out of him. No better example than when he picked off Aaron Rodgers in his first game ever. That was phenomenal. You saw him break on the ball. He read the route. That's from film study. That's from instincts. That is a very promising sign for a young rookie in his first game. I think Reed Blankenship is a guy that could step in and be one of your starters there. The other safety position, is it going to be rookie Sidney Brown? A lot of people are excited about this rookie Sidney Brown. I know the Eagles are really high on him. I think if he comes in and he plays the way he played at Illinois, he's instantly going to be a Philadelphia fan favorite. The way this guy throws his body around, how he hits, he plays. I've said before, not comparing him to Brian Dawkins' skill. Do not want to compare him to Brian Dawkins' skill. but the way he plays the game is very similar to Brian Dawkins with how he throws his body around. Barrett Brooks said the same thing, and Barrett played with B-Dawk. And Barrett gave Sidney Brown some really high praise. Barrett Brooks played with two of the best safeties to ever do it in Brian Dawkins and Troy Polamalu. And he said he saw similarities in Sidney Brown to both those guys. So can Sidney Brown come in as a rookie and solidify that other position? We will see. The Eagles do make a move, bringing in Terrell Edmunds from the Pittsburgh Steelers. In 5 seasons, he's only missed a handful of games. This guy's played a lot of games. He played 17 games in 2021. He started 15 games last year, playing in 83% of the defensive snaps for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's not great at anything, but he's pretty average, if not above average, at everything. So you're not going to see him probably make a lot of flashy plays, but he's definitely a serviceable safety. He's okay against the run. He's okay against the pass. He's probably not going to make any big splashes or crazy plays, but as long as he is solid in those two areas, against the run and against the pass, then he's going to be a serviceable guy. If he's your weakest link on this defense, then the Eagles will be just fine. But they have to make sure that that linebacker position is solidified and that other safety position is solidified. There's one more option that could potentially break the lineup at safety. I don't have any high hopes for him, and that's Kevon Wallace. And the only reason I say that is because he's had his opportunities to step in and try to take some starting reps, and he's been unable to do it in year after year after year. You saw Chauncey Gardner-Johnson go down last year, and instead of giving the reps to Kevon Wallace, they give it to an undrafted rookie in Reed Blankenship. So, Barrett Brooks, he said on the podcast, he's hopeful Kevon Wallace is going to get some reps this year. I don't see it, but we'll see what happens there. But if you guys are following along on social, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, leave a comment below. Who do you think is going to win these competitions? We talked about wide receiver 3. Is it going to be Quez? Is it going to be Alameda? Is it going to be somebody else? We talked about that right guard position. Who's going to win that right guard? Do you think it's going to be Cam Jurgens? Do you think it's going to be Tyler Steen? Maybe Jack Driscoll? And when we're talking about safety, who do you think is going to fill those 2 spots? There's really 4 guys to fill 2 spots. Terrell Edmunds, Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, or Kevon Wallace. Comment below, who do you think is going to win those spots? Let's jump back over to the offensive side of the ball. And I said earlier that the Eagles did lose starter Miles Sanders. In today's NFL, as much as I liked Miles, it just doesn't make sense to overpay for a running back. So I was completely fine with the Eagles letting him walk. And I absolutely love what the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman did at the running back position. They made some great moves, in my opinion. They bring in Rashad Penny on a 1-year deal, very low risk, high reward. They make a trade for DeAndre Swift with the Detroit Lions, who's in the final year of his rookie deal. They still have Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, and Trey Sermon, and I am fired up about that running back room. Let's take a look at Rashad Penny. I know this guy has been unable to stay healthy. There's no doubt that is a big, big issue going into this season. Can he stay healthy? Can he stay on the field? But if he can, and I know it's a big if, but if he can, this is a guy who's averaging 5.7 yards a carry in his career, not last season. Not only for 1 season, in his career, 5.7 yards a carry. That is an insane number. You look at the guy who led the league last year in Aaron Jones, he's only averaging a little over 5 yards a carry for 1 season. If Rashad Penny can stay healthy and you put him behind that offensive line with the threat of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert on the outside, and with the threat of Jalen Hurts pulling the ball on an RPO, forget it. You're going to see Rashad Penny be an all-pro running back, but he's got to stay healthy. And that's not the only move they make. They bring in DeAndre Swift. I'm so excited to see what DeAndre Swift brings to this offense, and I'm not as excited about him from a rushing perspective as I am from a receiving perspective. He's only averaged about 500 yards a season over the last 3 years on the ground. But you look at what he's done through the air, over 400 receiving yards each year. The guy's averaging over 40 catches a season. I mean, you look at what Miles Sanders did last year. Our starting running back, Miles Sanders, he had 78 receiving yards last year. 78. DeAndre Swift had over 400. You add a receiving element to this offense on top of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, it's going to be extremely difficult for teams to defend against this offense. And I had Johnny Marks on the podcast. One of his concerns about this Eagles team is keeping Jalen Hurts healthy by not having him run so much. Well, certainly a way that you can take some of the load off of Jalen Hurts is with little passes out of the backfield. What I would love to see the Philadelphia Eagles get back to with DeAndre Swift would be some screen plays to the running back. If you remember correctly, when we had Andy Reid, the Philadelphia Eagles were one of the best screen teams in the NFL. That's something they really haven't done a lot of. They ran some wide receiver screens last year, sometimes too often, but very rarely were they running any screens to their running backs. I think if Cam Jurgens wins that right guard position, he's a little bit on the smaller side, but he's athletic. This is an offense that would set up perfectly for the screen game. You put DeAndre Swift back there. You have an extremely athletic right guard in Jurgens. We all know how athletic Jason Kelce is at the center position. You have Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata on the outsides there. And Landon Dickerson's an athlete as well. This team is set up perfectly. Let's get back to being an unbelievable screen offense. That's something I'd love to see from this team. And that's what I'm so excited about. Those two new additions in Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift. But we can't forget about two guys that are still on this team in Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell. Boston Scott, every time he's called upon, this guy produces. It just seems like it's always against the Giants. But anytime a running back goes down and Scott has to enter into the game, he does something big. He steps up to the moment, and that's what I love about this guy. And then you look at Kenny Gainwell. Didn't have a great regular season last year, but man, did he come on in the playoffs, had some great games. In fact, got more playing time than Miles Sanders in the Super Bowl, which is still a surprise to me. But it just goes to show how high the coaching staff is on this Kenny Gainwell. And there's another running back. I'm not sure if he's going to make the team in Trey Sermon. They kept him around all year last year on the active roster. Didn't put him on the practice squad because they were afraid that another team would have came in and signed him off the practice squad. So they kept him on that active roster for a reason. Trey Sermon, let's see what the Eagles have in store for him. But really a great running back room with 5 guys who can really potentially contribute this year. I'm excited to see how the Eagles use them. Nick Sirianni has been on record as saying he has no problem doing a running back by committee. So I think what you're going to see is really, depending on the week and depending on the hot hand, each running back really getting an opportunity to contribute to this offense and contribute this season. But what do you guys think? If you're following along, which running back are you most excited to see? Comment below. For me, it's a tie between Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift for 2 different reasons. Rashad Penny running the ball behind that offensive line, and DeAndre Swift catching the ball out of the backfield. So comment below, who are you most excited to see? And then that brings us to the number 7 top storyline for me going into training camp, and that's these rookies, man. What a draft Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles had, and I can't wait to see these rookies. We already talked about Tyler Steen and Sidney Brown, 2 guys that could potentially be starters on this team. Sidney Brown at safety, Tyler Steen at right guard. But we didn't talk about their 2 first-round draft picks. I was saying the entire time leading up to the draft that I wanted the Eagles to either get Jalen Carter, and if he wasn't there, to take Nolan Smith. Well, somehow they walk away with both of these guys after the draft. I still can't believe it. I don't know who I'm more excited to see, Jalen Carter or Nolan Smith. I think both of these guys are going to be absolute studs in this league. And what I love is both positions are not positions where you need Carter or Smith to step in and contribute a ton of snaps. The Eagles are very deep at both defensive tackle and defensive end. So you're going to see Jalen Carter step in, really have an opportunity to be fresh and learn from some good veterans in front of him. You have Fletcher Cox. You have Milton Williams with another year under his belt, who I think is going to have a great season. You have Jordan Davis, who really the injury bug got him last year. You got a big guy like that who hurts his foot and his ankle. That's a tough injury to come back from. But I'm excited to see what Jordan Davis does this year. And now you add Jalen Carter to the mix. That defensive tackle position is going to be fun to watch. And then you move to the outside. They bring Brandon Graham back, who had a career year last year with double-digit sacks. You still have Josh Sweat, who can really get after the quarterback. And Derek Barnett is still on this team, which is interesting. But now you add Nolan Smith to that defensive end position. And let me not forget Hassan Reddick. What a year he had last year. Really should have been in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation for whatever reason. And I did a video on this recently. He just doesn't get the respect that I think he deserves around the NFL. But you add Nolan Smith to that defensive end room with Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, and maybe even Derek Barnett if he can make this team. And this defensive line is going to be fun to watch. This is crazy, but this defensive line has the potential to have even more sacks than last year's team had. And last year's team set an Eagles franchise record for the most sacks in franchise history. This defensive line could be even better, which is a crazy statement to make, but it is the truth. I can't wait to see him. And then there's another rookie that's an interesting pick. The Eagles obviously liked him. They traded up into the 4th round to get Kelee Ringo, another Georgia Bulldog, at corner. You watch this guy play, he's got the potential to be a CB1 in this league. He's got great size, great speed, looks like he's got great instincts. He's going to have 2 guys to learn behind in James Bradbury and Darius Slay, 2 of the best corners in the league. I really like that move by the Eagles. Not sure if you'll see Kelee Ringo play anything more than special teams this season. The Eagles are pretty deep at corner. They still have Avonte Maddox. They still have Zach McPherson, who a lot of people are high on this year. They're expecting him to step in and maybe even take some reps away from Avonte Maddox at that nickel corner position. But be on the lookout for Kelee Ringo to contribute on special teams. And the special teams units really suffered last year. I mean, you look at a great season for the Eagles, one of the best seasons in franchise history. If you had to take one area that they were not very good at, that was special teams last year. I'm still surprised they brought back Michael Clay, the special teams coordinator, but they do. But you got to give him better players to play special teams. I'm hoping that Kelee Ringo and even Sidney Brown are going to be guys that can contribute to those units and really help out in their kickoff coverage and especially their punt coverage. Don't want to talk about Super Bowl 57, but we all remember what happened with that punt return that really changed the whole outcome of that game. But guys, it is here. The season is here. I can't be more excited than I am right now. And like I said, be sure to check out the Jacob Sports Network. We're going to be live streaming our shows every single Monday night following the games. And I got some other big announcements. So be sure to subscribe. Head over to your social media platforms, like, follow, share, Legal Hands of the Face, Jacob Sports. This is going to be a great season for so many reasons. I can't wait. I really appreciate the support. And as always, go Birds.